Eagle 6 in the track.
Roger.
Viper 1 bombs away. One's going to climb high above 20. You're south.
Eagle 6 radar contact. Eagle 6 is visual.
And it goes left.
Welcome back to the DCS SITREP. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog, and I apologize to begin with for the long delay I took as a break from SITREP content and DCS content to focus on other areas of my life, which unfortunately were more important than DCS World. We'll tuck into that topic a little bit later, but before we do that, let's talk about what you're all here for, which is DCS news and analysis. Today we're going to focus on third-party development news, and looking back over the summer, we've seen some interesting announcement about module progress from everyone from Razbam through to Granelli Designs. Now, some of the released information has provided good clues as to the progress being made on some of these modules, others perhaps less revelatory about the aircraft's release development. But nonetheless, any information about progress on modules from the third-party developers is generally good for us. So let's start with probably what is the most eagerly anticipated module, and that is the F4 Phantom 2 right now from Heat Blur Simulations, which I suspect we may see in the last quarter of this year. 2 years in the making, the Phantom was slated for release at the end of last summer, but internal challenges to workflow saw that date evaporate, just as it did for the F15E from Razbam. Well, the Heat Blur team published a statement recently and several high-resolution pictures of the Phantom 2's cockpit, with an accompanying statement which is as follows. The team is presently working night and day to get the DCS F4E ready for launch. Phantom has now been in development for just over 2 years, and they say they've been working incredibly hard to build not only the ultimate recreation of the Phantom 2, but a sustainable platform for Heat Blur moving forward, starting with the launch of the F4. So it's a bit of a benchmark aircraft for them, in other words. Every rivet, screw, breaker, lamp, and otherwise will be accurately recreated, and what they hope will be the ultimate simulation of the legendary Phantom 2. Current progress, they say, is still on wrapping up some of the most complex and intricate systems coming to the F4E, and this one will interest you, and that is the Jester 2.0 version that they have right now, ready to insert into this aircraft. This will replace the original Jester 1, which we saw with the release of the Tomcat, which was something of a revolutionary AI system for a backseat Rio system to replace the absence of a second pilot, if you like, or a second player in that back seat. Obviously you can sit there yourself, but the AI that they produced was a really interesting concept and made the F-14 very, very functional for solo players looking to get the best out of the aircraft. Now, not only do they have to make sure the new features developed are great, polished and fun from day one, but they'll also be using a lot of new technology from both past and future aircraft. They're treading pretty thoughtfully, or carefully they say, and we've always tried to look for new ways to further DCS and our own products. The Phantom, they describe, will be no different. Elements like better in-game learning for RPG light mechanics in Jester are just some examples of what we've got going on this time around. Really interesting stuff. A key priority, however, is ensuring that you have a great experience on launch day, they say, with a rich and as close to feature complete experience as they can provide, and they'll be sparing no effort to get this done with the quality that we expect from Heat Blur. Now you can't wait, so they can't wait for us to fly the F4, so stay tuned for more news, including on this, but also their Microsoft Flight Simulator F14 as well. That is going to get updates along with the F14, the Vigin, and any other Heat Blur elements being shipped this year. They're somewhat quiet at the moment as they have their heads down and are working hard, but again, they hope to share more information for us soon. So what are the takeaways? Well, we still don't have a concrete time frame for the eagerly awaited release date. I don't think we should be surprised by that. As we know, dates are very fluid in this environment and can be subject to change. As I said before, I think we may see a pre-order in Q4 and a release date in open beta in Q1 of 2024. Now, I suspect this kind of timeline because, well, A, we've seen it before, but B, it will give Heat Blur sufficient module saturation gap between the Phantom 2 and the F15E Strike Eagle. This will allow Edie and Heat Blur to get more time to build up some Christmas sales as 2023 rounds out and then 2024 rolls in with what should be a hotly demanded product. Now, the other possible scenario, and most likely the best case scenario for most of us, is that we get an early Christmas release, which would be nice and certainly justify all the work that they are stating that they're doing. The fact that they've indicated they're working day and night maybe hints, as they describe, that they have an important deadline to meet. That's been hinted. That's what I suspect. Let me know what you think about that guess that I've made on the release date, and if you're looking forward to seeing the Phantom in game. I know a lot of you previously have said that you were going to wait for this over the Strike Eagle. Nonetheless, I know that there are many of you who want both products, so it's going to be a very interesting release, and I'm looking forward, based on the pictures that we've seen here at least, that going to have a very, very exciting module. Now, another little project that they didn't mention in the blurb here was they had hinted that they were going to release the A6 Intruder AI version this summer. Remember, this will eventually morph into a full fidelity module sometime after they complete, I believe, the Eurofighter with True Grit. So it's some ways out yet. We may see more information maybe in 2024, but the AI version will be a nice little addition to embellish the Forrestal that they have and the F-14. And certainly, of course, the Phantom Navy version down the road. I don't know if that is coming anytime soon. For now, it is a land-based aircraft. So there's a lot of little cool things to look forward to from Heat Blur, and they have quite a lot of projects in progress right now. And again, it's going to add to this growing list of Cold War aircraft that we have in DCS world. Well, now, speaking of Cold War aircraft, Edie posted some pics recently provided to them from Granelli Designs. This is the F100 Super Sabre aircraft. Now, this project was announced a little while back. Since then, the team have been slogging away, and Edie illustrated some of the highlights from that work and progress as follows. Utilizing advanced 3D scanning technologies and photogrammetry, they have obtained precise measurements, shapes, and textures of the exterior and the cockpit area. All data was then processed and refined, being sent to the 3D art team to be used as accurate referencing for the modeling and the texturing of the aircraft. The following areas were addressed to enhance the Super Sabre module. Starting with the exterior model, they used detailed photography, which serves as the foundation for creating an accurate exterior model of the Super Sabre. This included refining the aircraft's overall shape, parallel lines, or panel lines, and surface details and textures. The goal here is to recreate the iconic appearance of the Super Sabre with the utmost fidelity, allowing users to appreciate its unique design features, which it certainly has. Quite an unusual looking aircraft in many respects, and actually a pretty, if I believe correctly, was one of the heaviest aircraft in the Air Force's repertoire until Fat Annie came along. So there was a discussion point in a recent video I watched from Paco Benitez and The Merge. So I think it was them. Anyway, moving on to the cockpit model. The 3D scans provide invaluable references for recreating the F-100's cockpit. So every switch, knob, gauge, and control panel can be meticulously replicated to reflect the real-world counterpart, which is really, really cool. The detail going into third-party modules and modules in general in the game is absolutely amazing, visually at least. It's impressive stuff that we can do right now. Now, the integration of accurate cockpit lighting and functional elements will further add to the immersive experience of operating the aircraft, obviously in a range of different lighting conditions and potentially at night if that's your thing. Now, to enhance all of this, of course, sound design is crucial to embellish the visual and flight model improvements that they've made. The development team additionally recorded therefore a multitude of sounds from the cockpit which will enhance the audio experience associated with the Super Sabre. We've seen this with other aircraft too, as information comes to hand and teams are able to slot in this kind of detail, which is really important, and again it provides that immersive element that we love as virtual pilots.
22, contact Archer on 325.17. Double two, contact Archer now on 325.17.
Now the current progress on the aircraft is steadily moving forward, with the module currently in a flyable state, which is really promising. They have made significant progress in various areas, including the flight model, the engine, fuel and hydraulic systems. These are currently undergoing alpha testing. Additionally, we are actively testing and refining the core systems of the aircraft, such as the electrical, radio and radio navigation, TACAN, oxygen, lighting, IFF, seek silence and the base weapon system. So that's quite a list of things there. These systems are being fine-tuned to ensure their functionality and authenticity in the aircraft. Comprehensive testing allows us to identify, they say, and address any issues or improvements necessary to deliver an immersive F100D experience to the community. So a lot of parallels there to what we saw with heat blur, and of course heat blur have kind of been some of the benchmark of third-party modules. Of course, Brasbam have done a fantastic job with the F15E as well. So the standards we have in the game are very high for full fidelity modules, and in fact it does make it very difficult to go back to non-full fidelity aircraft, as much as I would love to see some of those non-full fidelity aircraft in the game. That is not a possibility, and that's the subject of a separate discussion perhaps here in the future. So let's move on to the next thing they talk about, and that is the future development of the Super Sabre. They are committed to ongoing development, which means that there are still further improvements to be made. The future plans include continuously refining and optimizing the exterior and cockpit models based on feedback from the community and their SMEs, fine-tuning the flight model to ensure it is a realistic and enjoyable flight experience. Again, some SME input is probably going to be crucial there. Weapon system implementation and integration, that usually is in conjunction with Edie, which will come up later on too as a topic here, and expanding the available liveries and customization options to provide a wider range of visual variations to the aircraft. And then we've kind of touched on this already, but collaborating with real F100D pilots and experts to incorporate their insights and knowledge into the module's development. If you happen to be, I guess, an SME out there, or an SME is kind of a loose term, but if you have knowledge of this aircraft and want to contribute to the projects, do reach out to the team there, because the more input that we have from people that have hands-on knowledge of these aircraft, it only benefits everybody else, and it is a cool way of keeping these aircraft alive and functional, rather than just as museum pieces, which as time goes on, that becomes more and more of a thing. So cool stuff. So takeaways from this, well, we can't really use the pictures that were provided as definitive guides for progress in the aircraft's virtual development in game. Those were scans used to provide information that will then be used as useful data for the ongoing 3D artwork for the aircraft. So if we go by the team's website though, the overall progress, which I'm sure you're all wondering where that is, they have it mapped out, and it indicates right now that the aircraft is about 38% done, which is probably lower than your expectation and what appears to be described here in the blurb above from Edie and the GD teams. However, as you can also probably tell from what we've discussed, some of these components are much more complicated than others to complete. So the crucial data point there is that there is a flyable aircraft, or an aircraft that is in a flyable state, which is what we really care about, because that's a good indication really of the team's general progress and working on that flight model The other stuff is more superficial, such as the the artwork and the texturing and all those kinds of things. Important, obviously, as a final product, but not in terms of core components such as radars and other sophisticated systems within the aircraft. Nothing there talked about in terms of internal systems, really. Hydraulic systems, damage models, all of that is probably going to be in progress. So I'm very interested to see how this aircraft progresses. It's a popular little aircraft. It will slot in very nicely, as I said, to these Cold War aircraft, which are a growing genre, a growing platform in the game. And one of the things that I'm very interested too is that these flight models are becoming more and more sophisticated. Remember that another aircraft that a lot of you asked me about, that is flying iron simulations. We'll turn to that now. They were doing some really interesting calculus in discussing flight envelopes for the development of their A7E Corsair 2 module. Now, I checked into their website, and at this time there is no official newsletter on the progress being made. However, I was able to find some Discord info, which HIP Games also discussed as well, I believe, but their Discord channel indicated that, and I quote here, they're making good progress lately. Currently, they are detailing core systems. These include things like the AOA systems, which had to be built from scratch, as interestingly, and this is similar to the F-14, I believe. The A7 does not run on standard AOA values, but rather uses an indicated AOA system computed by the tactical computer that displays much larger values. Now, this AOA system drives the indicator gauge and the HUD indications, the E-bracket, AOA indexer, approach lights. It doesn't drive those systems, sorry, but the approach lights, and most importantly the automatic maneuvering flaps, which they have just finished integrating. So it's a complex set of things going on there, and they've gone to an incredible amount of detail in this aircraft. And this is one I really have a close eye on because of the internal work that Flying Iron Simulations is doing. He talks here about the AMF system, which is quite neat and is used to improve handling qualities and turn performance below 325 KIS or KIAS by automated partial extension of the leading and trailing edge flaps. He also said they're digging into the complex hydraulic system for the landing gear, which is procedural and not just a matter of throwing the gear handle down or up. I know these little details are things that DCS nerds really love. I have asked Dan from Flying Iron to shoot me a message if and when that newsletter comes out, because I'd love to cover the detail that they're working on, and I know there's a heck of a lot more that will be revealed than what he's indicated here just in the Discord. So again, both of these aircraft have a popular following and will add to, as I said before, the band of growing numbers of aircraft. This will include the F4 Phantom, the A6 and the Sky Raider, which we also have an update about. So yeah, let's turn to that as well.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
Alright, well, let's turn to the A1H Sky Raider. This is being produced by third-party developer Crosstail Studios, and they had a nice little blurb recently about the progress that they're making, starting with the flight model advancements, which they're telling us they've made significant progress on to create a high level of flight model realism. The seamless integration of ground effect and ground handling during taxiing provide an authentic feel to takeoffs, landings as well, while support for differential braking and a parking brake will enhance the ground handling capabilities, ensuring precise maneuvering on the runway. It is a challenge. Some of these aircraft, the British ones, particularly the Mosquito and the Spitfire, they take quite a bit of getting used to. Can't say I've mastered my flight experiences or ground handling experiences with those aircraft. It takes a little bit to get to grips and to set up those systems. Nonetheless, this aircraft also will have a newly initiated cockpit shaking effect, which will accurately simulate engine vibrate and atmospheric turbulence, so you can immerse yourself in the thrill of aviation, making each flight a true adventure. The further refinement of drag calculations for the various control surfaces ensures a realistic aircraft responsiveness and, again, an authentic flight. realism experience. All control surfaces simulation is nearing completion, and the hydraulic system is also being implemented. Engine management, fuel consumption simulation, and the implementation of the onboard oxygen system is all progressing well according to the team. Additionally, the groundwork for future autopilot features has been programmed, and the AN/APN-22 radar altimeter is in fact operational as well. Now, to enhance all of these cool things that go on under the surface, if you like, or over the surface of the aircraft's frame, we also have a high poly cockpit, and the progress on this is promising. They are telling us that they have a meticulously developed and refined cockpit in every detail to create an unparalleled cockpit experience. Their team of animators are also hard at work adding lifelike animations to various cockpit elements, ensuring a truly immersive experience for every aviator. Furthermore, the skilled texturing artists are hard at work crafting intricate textures that will bring the A1H Skyraider's cockpit to life, which is exciting, with every gauge and instrument being, as described before, meticulously detailed. They have apparently some sneak peek pictures, which hopefully you're looking at, which showcase the progress, and they're delighted to showcase these rendered images and the attention to detail that has gone into this aircraft. It's very, very promising to see. Now, something again important is this AN/APS-6 radar pod, which I was not aware the aircraft had. I actually didn't realize it had a radar at all. So it's got to step up on the Warthog, I guess, but this has been specifically tailored for the Skyraider. The detailed architecture design guarantees a seamless integration of hardware components, signal processing algorithms, and data integration, creating an authentic recreation of this early radar system. The successful implementation of core signal processing algorithms enables good aircraft detection and tracking. Currently, our functional radar prototype, they say, is undergoing rigorous testing and calibration, ensuring accurate and reliable results. We saw a little bit of this kind of work from Heat Blur with the Phantom 2 as well, that radar, which is likely to be a little bit more sophisticated than the Skyraider's one, but nonetheless was relatively basic compared to certainly the F-16 and the Hornets radar, as well certainly as the Strike Eagles, which is a very powerful radar. Certainly not as powerful as the Tomcats. So it's nice to see this attention to detail giving us these comparisons of technological advancement within the game, and I think that's a neat thing to see. It's just kind of this, again, a degree of authenticity that we enjoy. But again, it's just a cool juxtaposition for the development of these aircraft, which, as I said before, become kind of living things within the game rather than just museum pieces, and I really love that kind of thing. So takeaway as well, similar to Granelli, we can't get too excited just yet about the gestation period that it's going to take to produce a flyable and tangible product that we can guesstimate when we will see in game, unfortunately. But the hard work is in things like the flight model, the radar simulation that we mentioned, not to mention the weapons which will accompany the aircraft in game. Remember that some of these will likely already be available in game from ED, say for example, dumb bombs. But the majority of these weapons are usually in ED's arsenal already, but there may be others that need to be modeled. So we will have to wait and see if they're available during the release or if they're going to come post-release, similar to what we're seeing with the F-15E in some cases. So nonetheless, the news signals really positive movement in the development of the aircraft, and it's progressing perhaps as expected, even though it's not as sophisticated as some of the other third-party modules. But it's going to give us plenty of time at least to wait for that to come out and give us time to play with these other modules in the interim, like the Strike Eagle and possibly, if I'm correct from earlier, the Phantom 2, which is looking really good. Now, I mentioned weapons, and I think it's worth noting here that Aviastorm, who are producing the DCS Tornado, put up a diagram recently of the reconnaissance and offensive weapons that they plan to bring to this module. Now, this list, which hopefully you're looking at now, includes the AIM-9L, which they didn't initially include and were advised to include it from SMEs that are providing them feedback about the aircraft's development. So that's positive. Again, takeaways. This is an aircraft which is much earlier in its developmental progress. We're talking here the Tornado, and we don't yet have an overarching reference point for general development, as you saw perhaps with the other modules like Granelli and the Super Sabre. It will, no doubt, I think, be a massively popular module, and even though it will be based on German variants of the Tornado, it will delight the Brits, since that aircraft has been a mainstay in the RAF stable for many, many decades in various guises. Like the F-15E, it's going to be capable as a low-level bomber, but those IDS versions, which the Brits created, were not renowned for dogfighting prowess. It's not, in fairness, what they were designed to do. That kind of role, they created different variants or ADV versions. These were built as interceptors. They could operate much more efficiently at high altitude thanks to better engines, better stack of air-to-air missiles for starters, and they also had computer-controlled wing sweep systems similar to the F-14 Tomcat. Nonetheless, it's it's going to be an exciting aircraft. The intercept versions, really, they are a different aircraft altogether, and there's no indication that we're going to see those in the game. It's a challenging project, really, I think, the Tornado, for this small team. They have admitted that the navigation and weapons officer spot in the back seat is actually more complex than the pilots. So they've got their work cut out for them. They aim to produce some sort of AI Jester system, which will occupy a lot of the development time, I suspect. And, my advice to them is perhaps maybe teaming up with Heat Blur on that portion of the project, similar to what True Grit has done to support their Eurofighter project, and then save themselves some of the headache of that. But regardless, as I said before, we're a long way away, I think, from seeing this as a flyable module in game, but news of what they plan to do and any progress that they're making on this aircraft is always encouraging to see. It's nice that they were willing to check in with us. Sometimes it does get a little bit, worrisome. You don't hear anything for a while. You wonder if the project's still alive. And oftentimes it's because some of these developers are very small studios. They're working part-time. They have full-time jobs. And they don't have time to produce regular updates like some of the biggest studios, such as Edie does, to keep us informed about where things are going. So it's all good, and it's nice to see them check in. So all the best to that team. I think it's a very, very exciting project, as are all of the projects that we've discussed so far. Well, let's turn now to the MiG-23 from Razbam. And some of you may have noticed that Ron Zambrano showcased some pretty interesting photos of the MiG-23 project that they have been working on for quite a while, in parallel to other aircraft like the F-15E and maps and all the rest of it. Some people get a little bit upset about this and say, well, you're dragging resources away from the main project, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, that's not necessarily true. A lot of these projects are being worked on independently by individual developers. That is true for the maps, certainly. The South Atlantic map, the guys that are working on that weren't necessarily working directly with the aircraft that were being produced. So there's different projects within the projects, if you like, and different teams working on various projects. So again, we can't make too many inferences in terms of the overarching progression of this particular module. It definitely looks like it's moved quite a bit from earlier this year and even last year when I was looking at images of this aircraft being showcased, and that's progress in itself, and that is certainly positive. We'll have to wait and see if it is revealed whether or not it's flyable in game at this point, or whether they've been developing weapons for it and so on and so forth. You get a lot of placeholder stuff. So we'll see as to what emerges. Obviously, they're still working on the F-15E, but as I indicated before, this does not necessarily mean that resources are being divvied up in a way that is inefficient. That is a separate project, and Notso has been producing quite a few videos on aspects of how to get the best out of that aircraft. Dropping bombs, pop-up attacks, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of material still to come to the F-15E, and we'll see whether we get more information on this MiG-23 as the remainder of the year rounds out, and certainly as we move into 2024. So stay tuned is the short answer. Now, because of the size of the video and the availability of information at the time of its recording, there are some omissions here that I don't necessarily have more information on for you. So I don't really have tangible information on the F4U Corsair from Magnitude 3, nor their Crusader project, unfortunately. That is another, both of those aircraft really are ones that the community want to get their hands on. So hopefully we'll get some more news here soon with regards to particularly the F4U, which is clearly a lot further along based on the images that we've seen and some of the renderings that we've been able to see through the developers there. Remember too that they're also going to overhaul their MiG-21 based on publicly available information that they were able to get their hands on. So you're really probably going to see something equivalent to what we saw with some of the aircraft in the ED stable, the Black Shark 3 for example, and the A10C2. So we'll have to wait again for more information. They haven't produced any newsletters for quite some time. As I said before, studios get busy and they don't always have time to do this community outreach stuff. So again, stay tuned. We also, unfortunately, sadly, we don't have any more news on the Kiowa. Wags did indicate that team had some setbacks, and we are aware of that, but he didn't provide any information on progress. I don't think, perhaps, maybe he wasn't authorized to do so, or maybe just didn't have the information to hand. And Wags was in an interview recently with Mover and Gonki and Wombat a couple of Mondays ago, so really interesting interview there, and I will do a breakdown of some of the things that he said in that video because I think it's worth going through. It is a couple of hours long, so it was a long listen. So I'll do a breakdown for you if you don't want or don't have time to go through that. There were some interesting discussion points there. One of those was actually the Chinook that Wags is working on, and he had indicated that he's been spending some time with that. Well, what we can assume from that then is that since Wags doesn't typically, he indicated he doesn't do programming or anything like that, my guess is that he is doing some testing for the flight model, looking at systems that he would have studied to make sure that they work, navigation, takeoff procedures, so on and so forth. And then at some point, kind of like what we saw with the Hind and what we saw with the Apache, we'll see some showcase videos of Wags operating the aircraft in-game in some theater of the world. So that's exciting. Helicopters, of course, have become pretty popular, and I expect to see more of those in the future here. Hopefully we'll get more news on the Kiowa, one of the aircraft that I am also interested in, and Miltech 5 is constantly basically throwing up pictures on Facebook about the aircraft's development, primarily renderings, nothing in terms of flight model or flying in game or anything like that. This is the BO-105, as I said. And I'm excited for that aircraft too. It's a small to medium-sized helicopter. It's very maneuverable, and that will also be a pretty popular aircraft, I think, as are a lot of the helicopters in game right now. So we've got lots to look forward to in that form, non-fixed wing flying, and it's encouraging to see what these small teams are doing with those aircraft, but also what Eagle Dynamics is going to do with the Chinook, which is that will be the first it's the first aircraft that's going to have more than one set of blades on it for a helicopter. So that's going to create some unique handling and flying characteristics, which I'm sure presented some interesting challenges for the Eagle Dynamics team. So again, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Lastly here too, I haven't had a chance to listen to this yet, but Red Star Simulations. A lot of you have asked me about this in the past for the Mig17 Frisco. Where's that at? Is it in development? So on and so forth. So as I said, I haven't had a chance to watch the video, but I know that I think HIP Games interviewed them recently, but also there was a The Enigma server people also spoke to them, and this again will add a Red 4 aircraft to our stable of Cold War aircraft, which no surprise that Enigma wanted to talk to them then. You know, there's a lot of people asking for later model Red 4 aircraft. Wags kind of covered this in one of the videos that I mentioned before, and that will be the discussion of a separate video as to why we don't have those. It comes up all the time. But again, I think this is a really interesting looking aircraft and is going to be a very popular one for people that love the Red 4 aircraft and are looking for a little bit more from that portion of the genre, that little niche there that exists, to get into these Korean War type conflicts, Vietnam conflicts, and so we need those aircraft in game. So I'm excited to see a little bit more about that. I'll post that link for you if you want to check it out for yourself and let me know what you think about it. All right, well, it's been a long video, and of course it's been a long time away, so I just want to thank everyone for the support over the last 4 to 6 weeks, or almost 2 months now. I got really busy, as I said, on the home front, work, and then from a personal point of view, my father actually had a very serious stroke recently, and I am anticipating potentially having to make a trip to the homeland to see him once he's a little bit better, and then I can wrangle some sort of flight back to the homeland, which is not easy to do right now, as you know, post-COVID world, and yeah, it's tricky to get down there, but we'll try to make it happen. And then lastly here, I'm just almost getting ready to wrap up, finishing up the office and rejig the setup here. I have some other projects that I'm working with on my, you know, my wife's side of the house, if you like, with her projects. Mrs. Prickly Hedgehog has a craft room that she wants me to hang a bunch of shelves in and do bits and pieces there. So, you know, we're busy people. This will allow me, once I have finished that, I'll be able to get my F15E throttle grip from Windwing up and running. This is going to embellish, possibly replace the Warthog. The boat switch on that went out a while back for me, which is a pain. So we're going to try out this new F15 Windwing product. And yeah, it's all coming together. It's just a matter of time and finding time. So it's been fun. It's been a busy summer. I'm a little tired. I'm looking forward to a schedule change coming up here in 2 weeks, and that will put me back on a regular day schedule, and I won't be doing any more training after that, or at least not as much training. So that will be good. Looking forward to the fall and autumn weather, winter weather, and that will also bring you some fresh content here. So let me know what you think. Welcome back, and let me know if you want more information on other aircraft that I didn't cover today. We'll see how Wags goes with the Chinook, and also Edie's newest warbird that's coming out, the Hellcat. So stay tuned for more. This is Prickly Hedgehog out. We'll see you next time. See you.